Greetings, seekers, wanderers, and scholars of the arcane. You just crossed the threshold into a world beyond the mundane, a realm where science meets spirit, where tradition intertwines with rebellion. Welcome to the Veil and Shadow podcast. My name is Augustus Grigori, your guide and fellow traveler on this esoteric journey. Are you new to the hidden wisdom of the ages or a seasoned practitioner? Fear not, for this channel serves as a sanctuary for both the novice and the adept. First off, Happy New Year. Happy to finally ring in 2025, and it's been a while since the last episode. I was planning to have this released a little before or after Christmas, but I was met with the most aggressive cold. Well, that's me and what feels to have been everyone. I swear everyone got sick around the same time. I had one hell of a sore throat, so much to the point where it was sore and painful to eat or to even talk. And as much as it pissed me off to postpone this episode yet again, I'm glad we're finally here together to have this. Now, you might have noticed, I didn't call it the Augustus Grigori channel. I called it the Veil and Shadow podcast. I figured with the direction of creating content that has been purely audio for a while, I figured that I've wanted to rebrand this series more as a podcast. So although this is technically episode 8 of Augustus Grigori, this is also episode 1 of the Veil and Shadow podcast. I want to warmly welcome you all to another journey into the realm of magic, spirituality, the occult, and everything in between. Look at me, unable to commit to this one thing. Aren't I hilarious? Well, let's get on with the podcast and the very thing that you've been waiting for. I think it goes without saying, Lucifer is one of the most discussed entities in the practices of demonology, demonolatry, the left and right hand paths, Satanism, Luciferianism, and in many syncretized practices rooted in Abrahamic cosmology. Ask any practitioner from any magical tradition, and I can guarantee you'll get a different idea or interpretation of who or what Lucifer represents. And despite the name Lucifer meaning light bringer or morning star in Latin, interpretations vary widely. Some frame Lucifer as demonic, others as a symbol of enlightenment, light within the dark, or a figure representing rebellion and the courage to carve your own path. There are almost too many definitions to count. And it really comes down to who you ask or what sources have influenced their understanding. Now, let's be clear. I'm not here to claim authority over what Lucifer is or isn't. I can only share my perspective based on my own experiences and interpretations. This episode and podcast leans heavily on my UPG, unverified personal gnosis. For those unfamiliar, UPG refers to personal experiences and insights that are not verified by academic or historical sources. Everything I share here is grounded in my own practice. It's personal, it's subjective, and it's not to be taken as definitive. You're not required to accept my interpretation, just as I'm not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't believe. This is my story, my experience with Lucifer, and it's just one part of the broader discussion that exists around him. And with that said, let's quickly go over what some academic sources say about Lucifer. So, from an Abrahamic standpoint, Lucifer is often seen as a figure of evil, commonly associated with Satan. In the book Lucifer, the Devil in the Middle Ages, Jeffrey Burton Russell explores how the figure of Lucifer evolved in Christian theology during the medieval period, tracing the shift from Lightbringer to a symbol of rebellion and ultimate evil. And similarly, Neil Forsyth's The Social History of Satan delves into the origins of Satan, and by extension, Lucifer, in ancient texts and how these figures become synonymous with evil in both Jewish and Christian traditions. Over time, the name Lucifer became associated with rebellion, pride and the fall from grace. The classic villain story, an angel of light, beautiful and radiant, rebelling against divine authority, and through that rebellion becoming synonymous with darkness and sin. There's always the Lucifer complex, if you ever heard of that. But from an esoteric standpoint, Lucifer takes on a different role, no longer seen as a fallen angel, but as a symbol of enlightenment, personal freedom, and the pursuit of knowledge. In these interpretations, Lucifer represents not evil, but the search for truth and self-awareness. In fact, some see him as a Promethean figure, rebelling against divine authority to bring knowledge to humanity, guiding us toward an awakening. And from what I remember, Azazel is also similar in that frame of a Promethean figure, if you've ever read the Book of Enoch. Gnostic traditions offer yet another perspective, often portraying Lucifer as symbolic rather than literal, representing inner light or divine knowledge, again, gnosis, that each of us can access. And here Lucifer symbolizes the quest for spiritual awakening and self-empowerment. Some esoteric practitioners even view Lucifer as like a Christ-like figure, a tester who challenges us, forcing us to confront our attachments to the material world, and in doing so, push us towards spiritual growth. And yeah, I mean, I could keep going about the many ways Lucifer is depicted in texts and teachings, but the truth is, I've always been less concerned with academic side, like with the academic side, and more interested in magical experiences, magical with a K, by the way, and personal encounters with Lucifer. And that brings me to my own story. Lucifer is one of my patron spirits, and I've worked with him extensively over the years. Now, that's not to say I'm a Luciferian. I'm not. Neither am I atheistic Satanist or affiliated with any specific dogma. My beliefs are constantly evolving, shifting with new experiences and experiments. I never claim to be aligned with one path or system. And Lucifer is an entity that I've done my best to separate from the biases often rooted in Abrahamic beliefs, because I don't see him as a fallen angel. Heck, I don't even see him as an angel or angelic entity, period. And through my own personal experiences working with him, he's never really manifested as such for me. That's not to say he won't manifest in that form for someone else, though, all right? But in my UPG, Lucifer feels much older than any recorded Abrahamic, Levantine, or Yahwist belief system. He gives off this very ancient vibe, further than anything I've yet to feel. And some people say that the Enochian system of magic either feels very ancient or very alien in feel, but I feel like Lucifer is far more ancient in this regard. To me, Lucifer is unique in every sense. His presence, his energy, his sheer magnitude is nothing like anything angelic or even demonic. He transcends those labels to me, and he's not just another spirit in a hierarchy, but rather a primordial force, a powerful god that existed long before human civilization shaped him into the modern figure that we know of today. He defies the simplistic categorization we often try to impose on him. And I've yet to find any sources, scholarly or not, that have really nailed who or what Lucifer is. At least to my own experience, as biased as that sounds, We can look into the historical accounts of how people back then described Lucifer, but even that's just speculative and was just personal gnosis that eventually gained traction over the years, over the centuries, and it seems like as a collective, the majority just seemed to accept. Typically, when it comes to Lucifer, the name is mentioned in the book of Isaiah and the book of Matthew, and it points to Lucifer supposedly being Satan after the fall from grace that is described in their respective passages. But there's a whole lot of Abrahamic bias in the Bible. Go figure, right? So really anything that really doesn't belong in the cosmology or is seen as supernatural that doesn't align with the Abrahamic God or any angelic entities for that matter it is immediately dismissed and labeled as something demonic. For example, Baal or Baal Hadad was a popular god that was worshipped in Canaan during the Bronze Age, and he's been later attributed to a demonic entity or one of the angels that rebelled in heaven and schemed to receive worship from those led astray from Yahweh. And, there's a whole story of the prophet Elijah contesting with the followers of Baal over whose God is true and real. And actually, you can actually see a full cartoon animation of the prophet Elijah on YouTube. And Elijah is illustrated in a way that makes him look like a Dragon Ball Z character. Seriously, you'll know what I'm talking about when you find the video. And it's pretty interesting because, you get a snapshot of how religion was back in the day. And in the sense of Abrahamic narratives, prophets would basically try to win over worshippers to worship this one monotheistic god and to demonize the former spirit that they would typically be seen worshiping. So in this case, Baal was then made to be described as the demon Baal after people acknowledged Yahweh as the supreme and only God. So if we're basing our entire view of an entity like Lucifer through the lens of the Abrahamic philosophy, then we're going to be quick to see him more like a demonic entity or a fallen angel or the deceiver of all men. And when I mean demonic, I mean how Abrahamic religions would define the word demon, which is typically a malevolent spirit. So I myself use the word demon and spirit interchangeably, but I don't define the word demon like how the Abrahamic faiths would. I'd rather go with the historical and ancient Greek definition of it. I think it's daimon, to describe a spirit or a source of some sort of divine power. So when I'm using the word demon, I'm not thinking about a devil or some sort of sinister looking creature that is out to harm people. I'm looking at it more like an external spiritual force that is independent of any traditional Judeo-Christian thought. So to give some background in my magical paradigm, I'm an eclectic practitioner of magic and the occult. I don't stick to one dogma, and I typically go by my own personal experiences over who or what tells me to believe. I work with a plethora of spirits. So that's demons in this case, spirits of other pantheons, of other religious beliefs, and that even includes angels or angelic entities that would typically be categorized within the whole paradigm of Christianity or magic that operates within Abrahamic beliefs, which may seem contradictory, but I've yet to get any conflict or any issues from these angels, given that I don't follow the typical philosophy of Yahwism or the belief of Yahweh as a supreme God. Actually, okay, not to go super deep into it, but my beliefs on the God Yahweh are more rooted in a mystical aspect. So Yahweh, Yod He Vav He, is just translated to I am that I am. And to me, that translates I myself being an aspect of God experiencing the self and experiencing reality. Therefore, we ourselves are just one of the infinite facets of God made flesh and experiencing the greatest show in the universe. And that the God Yahweh that people typically worship from the perspective of Abrahamic religions is a curated egregore based on looking at the concept of God from a vastly different lens. So don't mistake me for being a Yahwist in that essence, and don't mistake me either for being a worshiper of Yahweh. I'm looking at things from a vastly different point of view. So again, back on topic. My work with Lucifer has been unique. For me, Lucifer often acts as a mediator when I work with demons. Mammon, Mammon, Asmodeus, all are loyal to him. But what fascinates me is how, when I work with angels, I've found and discovered there's no conflict between them and Lucifer. And this might ruffle a few feathers, and it might have pissed off a lot of Christians or Christian magicians. Guys, nothing personal. And remember, you don't have to accept anything I say, all right? But my own personal experience, I've consulted Archangel Michael myself through my own evocations about Lucifer directly. And he's told me there is no issue between them. Rather, there was no great battle, no fall, no war in heaven. And he even told me that Lucifer isn't part of the angelic hierarchy at all, and never was. The Lucifer we talk about, the one we are so conditioned to connect to this fall from grace narrative, isn't an enemy of the angels. In fact, they can work alongside him. And for all I know, maybe there was a rebellious angel that may have been dubbed as Lucifer, but the Lucifer that I know and that I work with isn't that entity. From my own personal workings, I've come to believe that Lucifer is an ancient god, a very ancient god, one lost to history but ever present. And I suspect that the name Lucifer was adopted by this god of light because it resonated with him on some deeper level beyond just its Latin meaning of light bringer. Also, a side note, Lucifer comes to me androgynously, but for the sake of convenience, I'll address the pronoun as he and him just to make it easier for listeners. So, what's particularly intriguing about Lucifer is how he can appear in so many different ways depending on how you call him. I've evoked Lucifer many times, and sometimes he manifests as a blinding entity of light, embodying a human-like silhouette in front of it. Other times, he's a massive, shadowy figure with a deep, hoarse voice. At first, you might think that they're entirely different entities, but despite the differences in appearance, they all share the same energetic signature that is unmistakably Lucifer. So he can shift according to how you view him or wish to view him. I read a lot of modern magical literature, and I'm open-minded when it comes to experimenting with different ideas. If you've read Lucifer and the Hidden Demons by Theodore Rose, you're probably familiar with its pathworking rituals. It's a practical grimoire with straightforward instructions on working with Lucifer and his demonic hierarchy. I've used their methods, and though the way Lucifer appears may change, whether as light or shadow, personally for me, when I attempt those path workings, he typically flip-flops between either as a being of light, sometimes looking like an infant. Heck, I've actually seen him appear similarly to the infant Jesus of Prague, but behind him being this incredibly bright, blinding light. And I've also seen him as this super huge, towering, beastly entity with an intimidating dark aura, something that people would typically describe what they think a demon would look like. So that's another clue to how much things can change just based on your approach. And this is why people have different descriptions and definitions of their gods or spirits they work with. Even in organized religion, Christians in some sects have an identity crisis trying to figure out who their god is. Some people fear him and see him as this scary, powerful lord of everything that is angry at you and needed Christ to die in order to redeem you, while other Christians see God as a loving father who really loves you unconditionally and just wants to be close to you and to have a spiritual relationship with you. It's super different. Some even view God in both those ways interchangeably, and how they view their God typically translates to how that God basically treats them, or the lens that biases how they think their God treats them. So, yeah. Aside from modern books, you can't talk about Lucifer without mentioning the famous sigil from the Grimorium Verum. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't bothered with most of the grimoire. I didn't study its contents deeply. I took the sigil and I ran with it, using it in my own practice, and that's something I've noticed many magicians do. Find the sigil, use it, adapt it into our own needs without fully subscribing to the entire grimoire's methods. If that isn't textbook eclectic approach, I don't know what is. So, all right. Another thing, I've had the honor of having some friends on Instagram share with me their own personal gnosis of Lucifer, and I'd love to share it with you all. I posted a story of it on Instagram, and I had a few of them share their experiences. So I'm just going to read this straight up from my phone, and I apologize if it sounds like I'm breaking the flow of things. So Healer Trait says, I meet Lucifer when I was first going down the left-hand path. I had no clue how anything worked, yet when it came to infernal spirits, as I was just starting to be open to exploring all that, and I thought I needed to bow and make sure that they knew I knew my place as a human. I remember he looked at me and was like, "Stand up. We don't do that here." He really pushed for me to stand next to them. It was such a stark contrast to growing up in Christianity, where we are taught to fear God. This new mindset completely changed how I worked with spirits. Instead of coming before them in fear, I respect them and I respect myself. Lyndon Spence says, "A friend and I both have the UPG that Lucifer dislikes us using divination tools to communicate with him. We both prefer to use tarot cards to clarify our clairsenses, but Lucifer has told us that he dislikes it and prefers that we just trust what he says." Very interesting. Maddie says, "Here's my channeled hidden gnosis of Lucifer. To begin with, I have been channeling hidden gnosis in ritual and path working for over 10 years. Lucifer once came to me as a boy. He appeared as bald with very athletically built features. He was visiting me from within a scenery of abandoned and desolate infernal scaping. He spoke in a very familiar deep toned voice, quiet, caring, but had a very powerfully hidden restraint to his energy. In my hidden gnosis, he goes on to tell me of how powerful and intense his actual arrival really is. He usually has a very adept neutrality in his energy. He appeared to me as his red dragon aspect. He goes on to say how many will be guided in with his movements, his directions, and occult world understanding. He told of a certain aspects of his, and one of them is the red dragon aspect. This aspect of Lucifer appears as Lucifer himself, but caution is needed when pursuing gnosis from this aspect, for he is very intense to the simple newcomer. Another one from Your Bitch Chose Me. I genuinely thought my experience with him wasn't going to be seen as groundbreaking, but at one point I was trying to get him and King Asmodeus to enhance my intelligence, and my crown chakra was going crazy. And he revealed some stuff to me about the necessary consequences of hidden knowledge and why stronger beings were put in circumstances where they had to make an active choice to grasp power, even when forbidden from doing so. Also, and especially, the concept of truth and the idea that truth is not limited nor loyal to any religion, culture, political ideology, etc. Truth at its core is something boundless and goes beyond dogma. That's why almost every religion has some grasp on true, genuine spiritual knowledge, power, but can never fully lead into it. And something about a serpent casting off old scales to become a new, younger, stronger version of itself. And then in brackets, they say, "This was years ago. I was tampering with trying to figure out the real difference between Lucifer and Satan. I didn't write all of it down when he was showing me this partially because I was more focused on King Asmodeus at the time, who was explaining to me the pillar of severity being just as important as the other pillar and why vengeance is a necessary component of justice." All right. So, as you can see, there's a lot of interesting information out there, and everyone has their own unique experiences and realization on spirits, like Lucifer. We're all effective magicians, so we all have our own personal experiences that ring true for us, and also confirm the things that we do on our own path. And for those of you who've been following me for years, you might remember my old YouTube channel. I was still under the name Augustus Grigori, and I would share bits of gnosis here and there, talk about my altars and my work with different spirits and deities. At that time, I had a whole study room dedicated to my altars, handcrafted candle holders, like sigils painted on wood, wands devoted to Samael and Lilith. I mean, my practice was heavily focused on Azazel and Santa Muerte. But then I hit what I call my period of darkness. Think of it as like a dark night of the soul, but with more of an occult twist. Everything went dark. Spiritually, I went numb, and like all contact with the spirits I worked with, which was Azazel and Santa Muerte, it just vanished. I mean, nothing I did worked. I couldn't evoke them. I couldn't feel their presence. It was chaos, and not just in my spiritual life, but in every aspect of my existence. I thought maybe I was like cursed, or that a spirit was punishing me. I even reached out to King Belial and I asked if he was behind it all. And he wasn't. He simply said he was making way. He said, making way for something bigger. And I thought, okay, what, something bigger? Like, dude, to me, you're as big as it gets. Like, what do you mean, right? So yeah, I mean, I was spiritually drained, emotionally wrecked. I remember laying by my altar just for comfort. And even though I couldn't feel anything from it anymore, it was like the one place that felt like home, even though like all the light had gone out from my practice. But like outwardly, I pretended everything was fine to colleagues, to clients, to friends. I was still the same Augustus, but no one knew the kind of spiritual hell I was going through. But then like one night at 2 a.m., I was leaving a 24-hour gym. I was just wandering the city, trying to feel something. There were no cars, no people, just me and that heavy, suffocating numbness. As you can see, as you can hear, I was really depressed. And suddenly, like that feeling of numbness, it just lifted. And in its place, I felt this like an immense heaviness. It was like gravity had quadrupled. I thought I was having a panic attack at first, but my heart wasn't racing. My breath was steady. My chest wasn't tight. I was alert but calm. And in that moment, I felt a presence. And it was a voice telling me to go home and to return to my altars. Normally, I'd be skeptical. Like I would think that this is like, an imposter spirit or my mind playing tricks, but this time it was different. The presence was serious and powerful. I didn't question it. I ran home straight to my altar, and the moment I got there, I broke down in tears. The presence was overwhelming. Like there was euphoria, a sense of despair and relief just all at once. And I knew, I hadn't been abandoned after all. And then this voice tells me, like, take down the altars and work solely for me. Sorry, not solely for me, solely with me for a while. And of course, I was apprehensive and I said, okay, like, but who are you? No answer. I didn't know who that spirit was, but it was powerful, more powerful than anything I'd ever encountered. At this point, because I was so numb, I was looking for a sign, any sign, and that was the only one showing itself. And I figured, like, if I didn't try to figure out how deep this rabbit hole goes, I'll probably be stuck in the spiritual darkness. So I'd take anything. So I did what I did. I did what it said. Days later, I took down the altars one by one, and with each there was like no hostility from the spirits I'd worked with before. It was as if they were all in on it. Like they knew this presence was taking over, and they were stepping aside willingly. And okay, this was a surprise to me because if you work with Santa Muerte, like you would know she is a jealous spirit and is not one to share spaces with other spirits, nor would she be happy if you were to take down her altar. But in this case, she was kind and understanding and was totally fine with it, to my surprise. And, after everything was taken down, there was silence again. The same eerie quiet I've been dealing for months and dreading would happen if I were to start anew. Like, I was hoping things would immediately change. I didn't know whether I'd made the right choice. Was this spirit going to guide me somewhere, or had I just thrown everything away? Like, was this all in vain? The months that followed they were filled with confusion. I misidentified the spirit several times. I was thinking it might be like the monad or some Gnostic entity. Heck, I even went back to like church briefly, wondering if it was the God of the Bible calling me, but no, it wasn't. The silence persisted. It was maddening. I even remember being on a call with VK Jahanam once and sharing this story, and heck, he even helped me donate a lot of the altar materials to some local magicians in my area, so really thankful of that. Eventually, I was able to get my footing back. The sigil channeling did come back. I was able to do magic, but still communicating with spirits, hearing them and just overall connecting with them was still incredibly difficult. And then during the pandemic, when the world was in chaos, the lockdown happened, and I was basically alone. The voice returned, and this time it stayed. I was going through some tough stuff during the lockdown. I had my father pass away. My businesses were in turmoil during that time. I was chronically like getting high and nonstop smoking joints just to bury my feelings of anxiety and dread. I was going down like a self-destructive path driven by this grieving depression. I was basically going crazy in my own house, but all that was about to change when I heard that voice again. And when I finally asked again, "Who are you? Santa Muerte? Azazel? Lucifer?" The moment I said Lucifer, everything clicked. The presence magnified, the heaviness, the gravity, like it was it was if I had unlocked a door. I remember how it felt. It was this intense heaviness, but then followed this incredible lightness. It felt like I was about to float away if I wasn't holding on to something. It even felt like my ears popped, like in an airplane, or as if I had all this congestion flushed away, and it felt like I was no longer seeing my life through what felt like a TV screen. So, like, excuse me, Lucifer, he wasn't playing around. Like, he was here and he wasn't going anywhere this time. Channeling him became effortless. Like, it was almost like he was guiding me every step of the way, or like partially possessing me. I don't know. I asked him why he kept coming and going and why the long periods of silence, and then he told me, "You kept coming and going. I wanted to see if you were serious about working with me, or if you were just latching onto the next powerful entity that was going to fulfill your whims. The closer you were to me, and the more you were tuning into your own intuition and into discovering me, the more I revealed myself. The further you strayed, the more I hid, and you strayed a lot. Understandably, and that's okay, but you're here now." And, well, basically, the rest was history. My life changed for the better and gradually kept on getting better. I was eating right. I wasn't relying on weed or substances to get by. My businesses were growing faster than they ever had before. I was able to process and properly mourn the death of my father, and overall, things took such a positive turn. And I believe that it wasn't Lucifer just scooping me out of it, but rather I decided to take ownership and responsibility over my life, and Lucifer helped become that catalyst without having to basically rescue me from the pain that I was experiencing, but rather gave me like a valuable lesson. My growth in magic has been stronger than it ever was, and I'm happy to be here, where I am now, and where I'm headed. The lesson of knowing that there really isn't any spirit out there to save you, and that nobody is coming, and you're ultimately responsible for yourself. And that was something I had to learn. I was always looking for a silver bullet to my problems, and at times where I dug myself into a hole, I was relying on an entity to basically pick me up and rescue me out of it, despite me having the full ability to help myself. I was stubborn to drown and basically permit suffering even more, just so that I didn't have to take any personal responsibility and have these entities help me when I was already perfectly capable of doing it myself. So Lucifer gave me this gift of looking through life with the lens of having a healthy balance of acknowledging my own personal power and not give it up so freely, but to interdependently be there for myself and with the aid of the help of spirits. All right? So who is Lucifer to me? And to me, Lucifer is an ancient primordial god, or perhaps an emanation of a higher unknowable force, something that has manifested in ways that our human minds can barely comprehend. He's not evil, nor is he what we would traditionally consider good in many ways. I think the concept of the duality of good and evil in a black and white sense is way too close to human thought, and I suspect spirits are well above that. So I believe Lucifer is connected to the Ein Sof, the boundless infinite source in Kabbalistic tradition. And yes, I can already hear the Kabbalists shouting at me, but the concept of a boundless and infinite, unfathomable source is as close as it gets for me when it comes to trying to define Lucifer with my human mind. So, yeah, even if it sounds like a blasphemy, that's just how I feel. I suspect that, like, long before religious dogma shaped human understanding, Lucifer was revered or worked with by civilizations long lost to history. Maybe even like a proto god, or at least a prototype of how we understand divinity today. Without Lucifer, I wouldn't be where I am in my magical journey. So, the sigils I've channeled for you guys, the spirits I've worked with, it's all been through his guidance. And though we may never fully understand who or what Lucifer is, I believe it's up to us as magicians to continue exploring. The mystery is part of the journey, and this podcast episode is only going to be just one drop in the ocean of knowledge and gnosis for an entity like Lucifer. And the best part is, whether you agree with what I say or not, the fact that we're here now and exploring this is already something really big. As time goes by, I tend to channel Lucifer occasionally and let him speak through me whenever I'm trying to find answers to things. I find it Lucifer, I find it Lucifer. I find it interesting that Lucifer loves to hop into discourse when I'm philosophizing or just better trying to understand something about our world, about the nature of this reality, whether there's that's here on this three-dimensional plane or something external. It's pretty interesting because as post-pandemic, there's a lot more talks about the possibility of this reality being a simulation, as well as the existence of multiple realities or multiverses. And I truly believe it. In fact, I've always wanted to believe, or at least find a community that thought the same way, or thought the same way I did, or similar before the whole pandemic happened. I thought I was going nuts for thinking of the possibility that our reality is just a simulation, but to see now that there's actually much more people considering or even entertaining the idea, it's pretty sweet. I myself, I believe in the whole idea of God experiencing the self and the universe through infinite facets, and as God, reality can be transcendental and go beyond what we would conventionally accept as human beings on this plane of reality. I believe that if we are God, that we can wield that omnipotent power. However, we are purposefully limited so that we can experience the fullness of this reality without ruining the fun. If you play video games, or specifically played video games in the earlier 2000s, there was a device that a lot of consoles and handheld consoles had, which was called a Game Shark or an Action Replay, depending on where you were, right? This was an awesome device because you could basically program and put in these cheat codes to alter the game you're playing way beyond what the game programmers intended, and it would enhance or make the game way easier. So typically you can breeze through a game effortlessly with this thing. But eventually you do lose that spark for the game, because now that you have this unlimited power to alter the game in any way you can imagine, the fun kind of dies out because there's literally zero difficulty, zero struggle, and the lack of a challenge just it makes the experience kind of soulless. I remember growing up as a kid playing Pokemon and how easy I would breeze through the game, and it wasn't as fun as playing it legit. Anyways, you don't get to share that relatability anymore with other players and the struggles you may have had on maybe this one tricky boss or a tricky level because you basically cheated your way through it. So it really removes you from the genuine experience intended, at least if you decide to do that in your first playthrough. And that's kind of how I see reality. We have this capability of immense change, but there's actually a limitation purposely put within us so as not to lose sight of this human experience. However, we do get these little peaks and tiny moments of our own power translating itself on this reality, and it comes in the form of a lot of things. Like on the surface, we can classify magic and evocation as a good example, as well as manifestation. I think manifestation is just a form of magic, a form of mental magic, more so like chaos magic, as you're basically utilizing your will to change your reality. And one of those tiny moments of power is shifting. You've probably already heard of it through social media. TikTok loves to talk about it. Personally, I don't follow or believe in what most of these reels and TikToks say about reality shifting, but I do definitely believe that you can remove and reinsert yourself into different realities. And in fact, you're already doing it unconsciously. That's one thing I feel people in that shifting community miss. And shifting is something we can do completely on accident, or as like a failsafe, and we can collectively shift too. But being aware of this ability might make you think that, okay, well, if this reality sucks, then obviously I can just shift to another. Well, it's not that simple. We're still human beings with emotions and hopes and fears, and so we tend to go through these periods of powerlessness and feelings of confidence and competence, you know? So at one point you might believe and think confidently that you can shift, and then within a moment's notice you might experience something you'd perceive as like negative. And you give your personal power away and end up feeling powerless and unsure on what to do on facing that situation when technically you could just shift and change that narrative right away if you remember. So I asked about shifting with Lucifer, and I was able to channel this message. And he says, we shift realities often. The thing is, the knowing that we basically ejected ourselves from one reality to the next can be a little jarring to the mind. It will mess with our perception of what we are currently experiencing as real or not. So our minds have this adaptive mechanism that slowly has you forget about the fact that you shifted in the first place in order to preserve your sense of awareness and so that you wouldn't go insane. It's the reason why we're sort of like gullible in our dreams. Like, in your dreams, like, you ever notice like we're really gullible to the things that happen? The dream we are observing may be so absurd that such a thing cannot exist in waking reality, but as we dream, that suspension of disbelief is strong. And this is the same feeling, except this is your waking reality. Oftentimes, when you are aware of your power once again, you suddenly tap into a more controlled state where shifting these realities, and albeit in a positive way, almost becomes second nature. However, for most of us, the negative resistance, the part of reality that makes us like unhappy, that makes us, that causes us to be unwell or discontent, it can have us embody a sense of powerlessness. And thus we forget that we can shift. We forget that we have that power again. And it keeps us deep in a state of forgetfulness. And this is the spell of the universe, the spell of reality. A mechanism you created so that you can once again feel and experience this lifetime or reality at its full potential without you being able to guess what's next, or like what's going to come next into your life. That would ruin the fun. So it slowly has you forget about your power just to keep things fresh. But when you awaken, that sudden sense of waking lucidity, you go back on that higher vibration and start shifting to your will, to something better, to something that your physical body would find more comfortable. But yeah, that's what I channeled. So that isn't something we should take lightly, but it also gives us the opportunity to openly embrace our feelings of powerlessness and simply frames it in a way where the powerlessness is an illusion and isn't really the set in stone truth. So there's a comforting message in that. If you're going through something right now, just know that the sense of powerlessness you're experiencing is just an illusion to keep you grounded in this reality. And if you really want to, you can totally get out of that situation when you recognize and re-acknowledge your innate divine power. It's just up to you to take that into your own hands. And that's why I'm grateful for Lucifer. Working with him has truly been a culmination of these re-realizations of my own power. And his kind reminders, they helped me remember that we all have this power. We all have this power, right? And it's not hidden, it's not locked away in a book or in something that we can't reach. It's there. We just have to remember. And I'm not here to give you a neat, like, tidy conclusion to Lucifer or magic with Lucifer, because that's not really what magic is about. Instead, I want to spark more discussion and inspire you all to take your practice beyond the boundaries of books or whatever, what others tell you is the right way, quote unquote. Some might warn you that it's dangerous, and well, okay, they're not wrong. Magic at its core carries inherent risks. It's dangerous because it challenges us to step into unknown paradigms and philosophies and new ways of understanding the world, both the world around us and the inner worlds we rarely explore. The unknown will always carry a sense of danger, but that's also what makes it so transformative. So, to the few evangelizing Christians that try to find themselves in the comment section and pray or preach to us that what we're doing is bad, thank you, your intentions are well received, but the actions are not welcome here. So, get out. I hope this sheds some light and commentary on Lucifer. I mean, if you were looking for a set in stone definition of who Lucifer is, then you'd know by now that such a definition isn't really possible. Considering the unfathomable complexity of Lucifer, as well as the collective amalgamation of unique experiences other people have with him, this is just one of those experiences, and it certainly won't be the last. Now, before we wrap up this episode, I'm excited to announce some new services for those of you who want to work with me directly. So, personally, I'm not really into offering readings or traditional spell work, but I am deeply invested in providing tools to help you grow your practice. And that includes if you're already a seasoned occultist and you plan to sell your services online, and I'm happy to help guide you through it. So if you watched episode 7, which is episode 7, then you already know about my occult roadmap service, which is a fully personalized guide based on your unique astrological and energetic blueprint to help you map out your magical journey. You can go back to episode 7 if you want to learn more. In addition to the roadmap, I'm now offering sigil channeling services where I'll channel custom sigils for you to use in your practice. So, yeah. And one-on-one coaching sessions through Zoom that you can purchase per call. I've cleared some space in my schedule to make this work, but this won't be something I'll offer indefinitely. If you got a burning question or just want to pick my brain or on something that I haven't covered in a past episode, now's the time to reach out and book a session with me. And most importantly, I'm opening up the space to offer a true one-on-one magic coaching program that will span for 3 months or basically 90 days. This is an intensive coaching program where you will get to work closely with me on a one-on-one basis. This is not a course. I am not selling a course. This is me working with your needs as a magician and coaching you through it all holistically. And we develop and structure a working 3-month plan to improve your practice. And I basically hold your hand through it all. This doesn't just mean practicing magic, but this also means you can take on my coaching intensive for improving any spiritual business you run or occult business if you wish to take your practice and selling services to the next level. I've run online businesses before and have sold services, both magic and non-magical, for over 10 years now. And I've also helped a number of other practitioners scale their businesses to a healthy 6 to 7 figures per year. And that's in US dollars, by the way. I'm not a guru, but I can say confidently that I know my way around selling spiritual services online. And if you are selling services online, then you know darn well how difficult it can be navigating through regulations and seller policies, as well as getting people to actually buy your services and making a living with it. So If learning more magic isn't something you're interested in, but selling services is, we can still work together. Each mentorship grants you access to one-on-one Zoom calls with me, not an assistant, not a partner, me. This also includes initiations into specific currents, as well as access to methods and documents on magic, and most importantly, actual practical advice. Heck, like I'll even do magical services for you in the program if you so desire, but like only for that specific thing. I'm only going to be taking on 4 students for now. And that's honestly the maximum amount of people I can take on right now at my capacity. So I'm not trying to create scarcity. It's just a lot of work making 4 completely different programs for 4 different people and basically aligning my schedule with 4 other individuals. So, this offer might change. I might reduce the capacity of students on a whim. It really depends on how I'm feeling, but know this, okay? You want real tangible experience and someone in your corner holding your hand through magic and basically being a mentor and a friend to you. I've got that opportunity for you. And the fact that you're listening this far into it tells me it's no coincidence that you're here. So if it ain't Lucifer calling you, then it might be your own inner voice and need for growth, okay? Links are in the description below. You can go to augustusgrigori.com to take a look at the services, or you can follow me on Instagram and have a look at my page, or you can DM me while I still have a low enough following to answer messages. But yeah. With that said, this is Augustus Grigori signing out. Keep pushing your magical boundaries, dive deeper into your practice, and never stop exploring the magic within you. Thank you for listening.